All right, so how's it going? Hope you're doing good. And this is part 4. I know part 4 was I said it was going to be on how to calibrate a backpack sprayer, but we're going to make that part 5. Part 4 is going to be about spray tips and why are these things so important. I got an awesome question from a guy, and it was just way too much for me to type. And his question was, if he's spraying out a pre-emergent using, let's use this for an example, and if I understood the question correctly, he's using the same spray tip in this question. He's spraying out a pre-emergent over his yard at X amount of gallons per 1,000 or whatever he has it calibrated, and then he would also use that same sprayer to spray his cracks in his driveway, like with glyphosate or Roundup or some type of product like that, some type of weed killer. But what he would do is when he's spraying the pre-emergent, obviously he would hold the spray tip higher off the ground, but when he sprayed the crack, I'm guessing he wants to minimize drift, so he would hold it lower to the ground. And his question was, does that change his calibration rate? And the short answer is absolutely it does. Excuse me. I'll give you the long answer in a second, but this is my personal recommendation. I realize they make tank cleaners and tank stuff that cleans out residue and things like that. But this is my philosophy, and I'm dead set on this, and there's absolutely nothing in the world that can change my mind. If I have a spray tank or a spray machine or spray unit or any type of application device that I'm going to spray a turf with, spray a yard, or spray our tree and shrub program where I'm spraying crepe myrtles or hollies or whatever it is. If I'm spraying something that is a desired thing that I want to make look good, I'm not going to put Roundup in that tank. I refuse to. Now, I'm not saying everybody go out and buy an extra sprayer. You use your own judgment for that. You can decide for yourself whether you want to do that or not. But for me personally, we don't contaminate nutrient tanks with glyphosate or Roundup or any other type of killer like non-selective herbicide, Primatol, or whatever like that. So that's just a good rule of thumb. You can keep that in mind. That may be helpful to you, may not. All right, so if you're just dialing in, part 1, 2, and 3, I'll put in the description below so you can go back and check those out. And what I have here are some of the more common types of spray tip or spray nozzle or however you want to, whatever you want to call them. And obviously there are many options available on the World Wide Web. And these are just a few. These are some of the ones that we use. And I picked these two because this group here and this group here is kind of for the Let's Go True Green Chemlon type gun, the green gun that a lot of folks use. I know it's a real popular one along with the JD9, but the gun really doesn't make a hill of beans difference. It's this part that makes the difference. That's why we're talking about this and not the gun. And of course, for the DIY homeowner, the majority of the time, you're gonna have something similar to this. Let's see if we can get that focused. And it's a fan tip nozzle. Let me get my gloves on so you can see this better. All right, there you go. It seems to focus a little bit better with the black backdrop. So, why is your spray tip important? This is all, of course, some of this is going to be scientific. I guess you could call it scientific. I don't know. It's going to be researched information that is cut and dried, and some of it's going to be my opinion. So you can just use whatever part of it you want to use. and apply it to your business or your yard and roll with it. Okay, so for the most part, these things are color coded. Well, the reason they're color coded is that dictates or determines the orifice size, or the hole in the end in which the liquid comes out. I'm gonna show you two extremes right here. Hopefully you can see this good. As you can see, the orange has a considerably smaller hole than the gray. Now, I'm not gonna get into which size hole is which. You need to do your homework on that. I'm just using that as an example. These are all plastic tips. These would be a stainless steel, a brass, and then you've also got a plastic with a stainless steel insert. Now, why are they important? Well, a good general rule of thumb, if you do any amount of spraying through the course of the year, and you do, you spray multiple times, I guess. If you use your sprayer a lot, this plastic hole in this spray tip will get bigger. I assure you, it's happened to me before, it's just proven. It will get bigger. The constant pressure running through here, and through here, it opens up that hole, therefore changing your calibration. So these are old spray tips. We don't even use the plastic ones no more. We prefer the one with the stainless steel insert. Of course, I like those over the brass or the stainless steel, simply because they're cheaper than if you buy a solid brass one or solid stainless steel. And this stainless steel won't wear out over time, so your calibration stays consistent. All right, so let's just base this off of 40 PSI, 40 pounds per square inch. That's your pressure that your tank is putting out. Now, obviously a backpack sprayer is gonna be less than that or more than that. A truck sprayer is gonna be less or more than that. But I'm just gonna, for example only, we're gonna set the bar at 40 PSI for all of these tips. So that's our constant. If you remember, we have variables and constant when we're spraying and a calibration. So we're gonna make a constant 40 PSI for demonstration purposes. Okay, so earlier you heard me talking about the different color has a different hole size. Well, it's the same thing with these commercial type applicators. You can see the green has a little bit bigger hole than the yellow. The yellow has a little bit bigger hole than the blue. Well, what does that have to do with the price of eggs in China, right? Well, remember we have our 40 PSI pressure. Now, if I put 40 PSI behind, let's go over here, it's a little easier to see. If I put 40 PSI pressure on this blue spray tip, you see it's got the smaller holes, and then I put the same 40 PSI on this green spray tip, which has the bigger hole, you're gonna get more flow and more volume out of the green one, simply because the holes are bigger. It's somewhat of a common sense thing that kind of folks overlook. You got to remember, you need to keep this stuff simple. Don't make it harder than it is, because it's simple math, and this is just proving my point. The holes are bigger than this hole. So you get more flow, or more liquid will come out. And just say, for example, you might get 10 gallons a minute out of this one, whereas you might get 14 gallons a minute out of this one using the same 40 PSI. Now don't go off those numbers. I have no idea what the gallon per minute is on this. And that was the question the guy had. He was saying, well, I was walking and getting, back in video number 2, I was walking and getting 2 gallons per minute. I was getting 2 gallons per 1,000 in 22 seconds. And he said, well, the yellow tip says that it is 2 gallons per minute. Well, how did you get that in 2 gallons per 1,000? 2 gallons in 22 seconds. So the answer is simple. I did that with my pressure. I raised the pressure up to where I wanted it to be. See, the cool thing about all this is there's no set thing you have to do. You can spread a quart per thousand. Permagreen proved that. You can spread a gallon per thousand. You can spread 2 gallons per thousand. You can spread 3 gallons per, you can spread, I mean, the daggone airplanes, when those crop dusting airplanes, they might put 6 or 8 or 10 gallons of finished solution over top of an entire acre of property. And to me, that is absolutely mind-blowing that they take 7 or 8 or 10 gallons of a solution that has their nutrient or herbicide or whatever in it, and they accurately apply that over an entire 43,000 square feet. So back on track here. The hole size determines your flow, how much is coming out. Now, another thing it determines, and this is so important. I mean, just incredibly important. It determines your drift as well. And what is drift? Well, drift is those little microscopic, teeny tiny particles of water that float away in the air that are off target. And what do I mean by off target? Let's say this green thing here is Miss Jones' award-winning rose bush that she cares for and manicures and does everything right. And she's won the North Carolina Rose Bush Association contest 20 years in a row. And let's say this is you with your sprayer, and you're going by her yard and you're spraying, and a little bit of fine drift mist floats over on here. And let's say you're treating this turf area with something like triclopyr, something hardcore, and that little bit of drift gets over on this award-winning prize rose bush, and you get herbicide damage on it, or either you kill it. Well, that's why this is important. We don't want to kill Miss Jones's award-winning bush because she's worked on this thing 20 years, right? So we want to respect that. So that's why this is important. To pick the right spray tip, the hole needs to match your pressure. And the only way you can do that is trying it out and testing it and figuring it out. I can't tell you which one it is. For us, the way we get 2 gallons per thousand is this is similar. This is a GNC tip. It's got the exact same threads as the Lesco tip. The only difference, see, this goes back to what I showed you earlier, the stainless steel insert that never wears out. Well, this has got a stainless steel insert that doesn't wear out. And that's why we use that. And the holes are a little bit bigger than this hole. So we have our pressure right to where this throws out a heavy droplet, a big, fat, heavy droplet, and there's very minimal mist. I mean, it's little to none. Now, if we left our spray truck at the exact same pressure it is set up at right now, like in video number 2, I can't remember what the pressure was, but if we left it like that, and let's say all we did was change this spray tip, and we put the blue tip on, well, the holes are considerably smaller. Let's see, where's the end of this thing? Look at that. The holes are considerably smaller on this. So you're trying to force the same amount of liquid through smaller holes as you are bigger holes. So what's going to happen is you're creating more force behind it. And so it's going to shoot out of there a lot faster. And those streams are going to be smaller, tighter, and faster. And if you took your hand and put it in front of the yellow tip, the water would hit and kind of run off. And if you put the blue tip in front of your hand, it would probably splash back in front of your face because you're creating more pressure there simply by changing the hole size, because you're not allowing as much liquid to escape. I really hope that makes sense. That's kind of hard for me to explain, but hopefully I did a good job. So I'm gonna prove that to you, that the hole size makes a difference. And this will somewhat answer the question. Well, no, actually it really won't. I'm gonna answer that question now. The gentleman Gosh, I cannot remember his name or his code name on YouTube or whatever it was, but thank you for the question. He was the guy that was spraying his pre-emergent with the same spray tip and holding it up higher. And then when he sprays it down low for doing his cracks with his Roundup and all, he was asking, did that change his calibration? Absolutely it does. Most certainly it does. And the reason is, remember, one of our constants is height. So when you have this sprayer spraying at one height and it's spraying a pattern, you're getting a wider pattern, and you're evenly distributing that product across that pattern. Well, when you lower this down to the ground, you change that pattern significantly. And off the top of my head, I can't think, you're probably putting out less if you have it calibrated for up here, but then you lower it down that much, you're probably putting out less product here. So my recommendation to that fellow would be to calibrate it two ways. You can calibrate one sprayer two ways, especially a backpack sprayer. It's super duper easy to do that. We'll do that in video 5. But you hold this up here, you do your calibration just like we did in video 2, and you write that down or take a mental note. And then you also, for when you're spraying your Roundup, you hold it down here and you calibrate it as well. Now do it with water, don't do it with your chemical. We don't want you to waste your money. And then once you get those two different calibrations, you'll have calibration 1 here, calibration 2 here. Then you know how much product to put in the tank when you're spraying those different liquids. So to kind of prove my point about the hole size allowing more product out at the same pressure, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a battery powered backpack, or actually this is a two gallon, excuse me, this is a 2 gallon hand can, and I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna take 2 measuring cups. I'll go grab them in a second, and I'm gonna set them up here, and we're gonna time it. And so my constant is going to be, we're putting it in a measuring cup, so there's really no height or width involved. We're collecting all the material in one spot. And then my other constant is my pressure. And of course the third constant is speed, because we're not moving. It's going 0 mile an hour. But the pressure is no different. So that way we're gonna put the same amount of pressure through this gray tip as we are this orange tip. And I'm gonna try to figure out a way to load these side by side on the video, and that way we can get a good comparison of it. Okay, so I'm gonna let it run for 30 seconds, and we're gonna start that. I'm going by the timer on my clock now. So this is the orange tip with the smaller orifice size, and we're running it at the same PSI, the same pressure, and we're collecting everything to see it. We're trying to find out the difference in how much it puts out. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, so you can see we got about, when there's no about, that's 8, 6, I think that's 4 ounces. Is that right? Yeah, I think we're at 4 ounces right there. So let's change the tip over to the gray one, which is a bigger orifice size. And remember, we're keeping everything constant except the spray tip. All right, so here we are with the gray tip. I'm gonna let it get to 5 seconds and go. We'll run it for the same 30 seconds. Same PSI, same sprayer, same everything. That's 25 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, big difference. That's 22 ounces. So you can see just that that little tiny change that we made. All we did was change colors of the spray tip. That's the only thing we did. And you can see we've got 4 versus 22. That's a big difference. Now, can you imagine if you had your machine or your spray truck or your backpack calibrated, and then you all of a sudden just get a wild hair and say, I'm gonna put a different spray tip in it to see if it sprays better. And you forget that spray tip is in there, and you end up spraying for 2 or 3 months, or the whole season, let's say. You would be surprised if you go back and do the math at just how much money you threw out the door. Depending on if you changed that spray tip and you went down in color and made the hole smaller, you actually you cheated someone out of something because you put less product out than you told them you were going to put out, or that's the whole integrity behind it. And if you went to a nozzle that had more a bigger hole size, then you cost yourself a buttload of money probably. So that's why all this is important. That's why that's the whole reason I'm doing this whole video series. Is I've just seen so many questions about calibration, and honestly, I'm just being straight up and forthright. I honestly thought this was a common knowledge in the spray industry or in the lawn care industry, that you just know how to calibrate a sprayer right. And I'm not saying everybody doesn't. There are bazookas of people out there that know how to do it correctly, but there's also bazookas of people out there that don't have a freaking clue. So that's the whole reason I'm putting this together. So hopefully it helps the guy starting out or wanting to start spraying, or is already spraying but not doing it right, and all that kind of thing. You can take this video series, put it together, apply it in your business, and you can be precise and spot on with your applications. Because at the end of the day, why are you in business? You're in business to provide for your family, pay your bills, have a quality of life, buy something, go buy a Jeep when you want to buy it, or do whatever. And you can't do that without money. There's nothing free but Jesus. That's the only thing that I know of that's 100% free is the gospel. So other than that, it's just not free. You need money to do it. And unfortunately, that's just the bare bones to it. So that's the reason behind all this is why I'm doing it, so that you can apply this knowledge, and then you can save you some money and do things the right way. Okay, so at the end of the day, how do you take this and apply what we've talked about with spray tips or spray nozzles, and specifically make it work for your situation? Well, for the majority, I don't know this for a fact, I'm just guessing, but I would say the majority of the DIY homeowner guy that likes to, takes pride in his yard and spray and all that kind of thing, my guess is you probably have a pump type sprayer, meaning you've got a arm on the side of your sprayer that you pump it up and down to create the pressure to release the product. When you buy that pump, when you buy that sprayer, it typically comes with one of these, with a spray tip. I think one of the more common ones is the red tip or the yellow. They seem to be most common. The ones we buy, that's what they always come with. So you're probably not going to go out and research and buy a bunch of different colored tips and try to find something out. So here's what you do. You make the tip work for you. And the way you do that is by, when you calibrate it, you create a pressure, a consistent pressure. And really the only way you can do that with or the way we do it, the way we train our employees to do it, is by the number of pumps you apply as you're spraying. And we count in between the spray. So example, we would pump 3 times. and we would spray for 10 seconds. And then we would pump another 3 times and build that pressure back to where it was, and then spray for another 10 seconds. That's kind of the way we do our pump type sprayers. But you make this spray tip work for you, meaning when you calibrate it, you hold it at a height that you're comfortable holding it, where you get a good uniform coverage, a good uniform pattern, and then you calibrate it like that. Don't go through all the trouble of changing all the nozzles and all that kind of thing. You make this work for you. Now, when you pump up your pump sprayer too much, you create too much pressure, and that's where you get that overspray or that mist, and that's a bad thing. We don't want to do that. So keep your pressure low on your pump sprayer when you calibrate. Now, are you going to get a pump up type sprayer perfectly calibrated, and every single last drop that comes out of the end of the spray tip is dead accurate? My answer for that is no. Simply because there's no constant in the pressure. No matter if you pump it 2 times or 2 1/4 times, it's so hard to keep a pump type sprayer at the exact same pressure. Of course, they make these little gauges that go on the end of them that you can use that and go by that. So I think Solo makes this thing that it goes on the end of your wand. It's red, it's kind of fat, and then this goes on the other side of it. And it's basically a pressure regulator is all it is. And it will keep your pressure constant. So that's an option. For the spray guide, first of all, you need to figure out how many gallons per 1,000 do you want to spray at. That's totally up to you. There's so many ideas and theories on which one's best. Who knows? Who knows which one is the best? But you have to figure that out on your own, which way to go. So I cannot help you with that. But what I can help you with is once you figure that out, then honestly, I would recommend the guy starting out, go ahead and buy all 3. Buy the blue one, buy the yellow one, buy the green one. Whether you buy the Lesco brand, of course, I'm going to recommend the GNC brand because of the stainless steel inserts. And I have no affiliation with them. They don't even know me. But I like their spray nozzles because they last a long time. So you buy all 3, and then you play around with it. You get your pressure to where you feel where the manufacturer of the pump recommends you run it. If they don't have a recommendation, then you play around with it. And what you do is you put different nozzles on the gun, and you visually look at your pattern. You look at the droplet size. You look at the pressure coming out. If it's spraying really hard and you're getting a lot of overspray, a lot of mist, a lot of drift, you go up a nozzle. You either drop your pressure on the regulator or you go up a nozzle size, one of the two. I will say this, the green tip, you have to have a serious pump to push that liquid through this, because those are very large holes right there. 2 gallon a minute with a cap of 43 works very well with this yellow one to get you 2 gallons per 1,000. Excuse me. I keep saying minute. I got that question in my mind. But we could care less about gallon per minute. I could care less if it's 100 gallon per minute or half a gallon. Who gives a crap? Or forget gallon a minute out of your head. Get it out of your mind. Forget thinking about it. It's gallon per 1,000. And that goes back to one of my other videos where the recommended rates on these labels of these products, they don't say go out and spray 3-way herbicide at 8 gallons per minute. They don't say go out and spray 3-way herbicides at 32 ounces per minute. It's 32 ounces per acre is what it is, or 2 quarts. I think that's the rate on it. Don't you read the label on that before you do that. I've got a lot going on in my head, and some of these rates may not be right. But we want gallon per 1,000, so you have to play around with this stuff. It's what you have to do, and you have to figure out a good spray pattern. Which one of these tips produce a good spray pattern for you? Now, if you're a guy that's going to spray at a gallon per 1,000, and you're going to use a low pressure pump, you can get away with the little holes because it's not going to create so much pressure to where it creates all that overspray. If you've got a bigger pump and you're spraying and you want to go at 2 gallons per thousand, you want to use a tip that has a little bit bigger holes in it. If you're going out at 3 or 4 gallons per thousand, which that's a lot of water. To me, 2 gallons per thousand is my limit. We don't spray any heavier than that because I personally feel when you get over, unless you're doing soil drench type applications, that's a lot of water in the tank, and you can be way less productive unless you have a very big tank. So hopefully this has made some sense to you. I know I've rambled a lot in this video because it's a heavy topic for such a little tiny thing. But at the end of the day, same pressure, same everything. The bigger hole is going to allow more product to come out. The smaller hole is going to allow less product to come out. You just have to find that happy median somewhere in here to where it works for what you're doing. I can't give you a use this or use that or use that. I can't do that because I don't know what you're spraying. I don't know what your rates are, your gallon per thousand. I don't know any of that. So hopefully this was a good overall video and helped you to understand this. And I'll put part 1, 2, and 3 in the description below. And I'll also make video number 5, which is going to be how to calibrate a battery-powered backpack sprayer or hand can or whatever you want to call it. And then you can also take that information and apply it to a pump type, because it's really not a huge amount of difference in the way you actually calibrate them. So I've enjoyed it. Again, like I said, I love talking about this stuff. I could eat it for lunch. It's just so incredibly cool, all this spray stuff. So have a great evening, and we'll see you in the next video.